a bit.
Were you ever in prison, though?
Nassau County Jail was as far as it went for me.
Right.
But everything that he said, it was the truth. You know, man, you didn't feel it like, oh, this dude is lying. Everything he said, it was the truth. And one of the most genuine people you want to meet, man.
Hey, he knew how to fight for sure.
And
He knew martial arts, man.
He was big into it.
Charlie Murphy could have you laughing so hard your ribs hurt. But behind that grin was a past so raw, most people never dared to bring it up. He wasn't just Eddie Murphy's big brother or the wild storyteller from TV.
Did you like to fight?
I learned to like it. You know, when it's something that's gonna happen, it's inevitable. You know, it's part of the environment. It's either one way or the other to take it. Either you're gonna ball up into a fetal position or shrimp or whatever.
Charlie came out of New York's toughest blocks, running with the King Python's gang, surviving poverty, violence, and heartbreak that would have broken most men.
I got rid of my gun because I was gonna solve a problem that was very simple, okay, with a gun, because I got emotional, I got angry, and the first, oh, you're gonna talk to me like that? I'm gonna solve it like this.
After their father was ended, Charlie turned stone cold, stepping up to shield Eddie through high school, carrying wounds from a world Hollywood had no clue about. And when that mask slipped,
I think what I really think affected me the most was, you know, when I was 10 years old, my father was murdered.
Right.
Okay? And I didn't realize it, but I guess it had an effect on me. I became, you know, angry or whatever. Yeah, you know.
People realized Charlie Murphy wasn't just funny. He was dangerous and always had been. Most fans first met him through the laughs, the Chappelle's Show skits that went viral before viral was even a thing.
When he passed away, nobody said Eddie Murphy's brother died.
Right.
Everybody was like, Charlie Murphy passed away. So he had his true identity, and that was Charlie Murphy.
That booming voice, those Slayers punchlines, the Rick James and Prince stories that became comedy gold, they stamped Charlie into history forever.
I think what I really think affected me the most was, you know, when I was 10 years old, my father was murdered.
Right.
Okay? And I didn't realize it, but I guess it had an effect on me. I became, you know, angry or whatever. Yeah, you know.
But for the ones really watching, Charlie was more than the funny brother. He was a writer, an actor, an artist carving his own lane in Hollywood.
I'm very protective of both of my younger brothers.
Right. So if I said something bad, you would jump on my...
But here's the truth people don't talk about. Every laugh Charlie delivered came from a darker place.
We moved to Roosevelt, and then, you know, I was an outcast in Roosevelt because I was from Brooklyn.
Right.
His life wasn't polished stages and bright lights. It was shaped in Brooklyn back alleys, Long Island corners, jail cells, and standing alongside men who earned respect the hard way. Charlie even admitted it himself. His humor was born out of anger, and not some little frustration you could shake off. It was the kind of rage carved into him by a childhood that was brutally unfair.
And it together with, because that year, for some reason, there was a lot of people, like a mass migration of people from the city moving out to the island.
Right.
So we all became a crew.
He came into this world as Charles Quentin Murphy in 1959, straight out of Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood, a place where struggle was the daily language. His family didn't have much, and by the time he was just 5, his parents split. Then tragedy struck again. When he was only 10 years old, his father, Charles Edward Murphy, a transit cop with dreams of becoming a stand-up comic, ended in cold blood.
And you could tell when he was growing up, he was the guy that always had the center of attention.
Yeah.
You could just tell that.
Yeah, you could tell.
Yeah.
He knows how to hold a story.
Charlie would later admit he didn't even process it right. He never cried enough. He just buried the pain deep down. Because what else can a 10-year-old boy do? A loss like that doesn't fade. It hardens you, turns you into something else. But the nightmare didn't end there. Not long after, his mother Lillian got sick with tuberculosis and had to be hospitalized. That's when Charlie and little Eddie got shipped off to foster care, and that's where things got ugly. Their foster mother was abusive, and Charlie, already broken from losing his dad and missing his mom, was now forced to protect himself and his baby brother in a stranger's hostile home. This wasn't some normal childhood, it was survival. Charlie became Eddie's shield. At school, if anyone even thought about messing with Eddie, they had to go through Charlie first, and he made sure they regretted it. That mix of pain, anger, and responsibility was shaping him into something fierce, a protector forged in fire. After their father's passing, the family moved to Roosevelt, Long Island. On the surface, it looked like the American dream. picket fences, green lawns, but Charlie would later say it was all fake. Roosevelt in the 1970s was a trap, violent, unpredictable, and way rougher than people wanted to admit. Behind the pretty houses was a battlefield, and for kids like Charlie, already carrying scars from Brooklyn and foster care, it was just another battle zone. When Charlie and his family landed in Roosevelt, it wasn't a warm welcome. It was a test. If you weren't ready to throw hands, you were going to get hurt, plain and simple. Outsiders from Brooklyn like him were treated like outcasts, and Charlie wasn't about to let anybody break him. Instead, he linked up with other kids who didn't belong either, and together they built their own crew, the King Pythons. That name wasn't just for show, it was survival. Rolling with the King Pythons meant you didn't walk the streets alone. You had backup, protection, a brotherhood, and Charlie didn't stay at the bottom for long. He rose quick, earning the nickname Little Boss. That title meant people listened when he spoke. They followed his lead. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but the way he carried himself demanded respect. And in Roosevelt, respect was life or death. Being a Python wasn't just talk, it was daily warfare. After-school brawls, holding down your block, staring down rivals, sometimes situations that could turn fatal in a heartbeat. Roosevelt was crawling with crews, and clashes were inevitable. Backing down wasn't an option. Charlie learned that lesson early, and he lived it every single day.
Sure.
And he
knew martial arts, man.
He was big into it.
One story he told made it clear just how real it was. 9th grade, a classmate pressed a pistol right to his forehead and pulled the trigger. The gun misfired. That was the only reason Charlie walked away breathing. For most people, that's trauma for life. But for Charlie, it was just another day in Roosevelt. Living like that changes you. It makes you sharp, but it also makes you fearless. Because once you've stared passing in the face, nothing feels impossible. Eddie Murphy himself admitted in interviews that kids at school left him alone, not out of kindness, but because they knew who his brother was. As Eddie put it plain, Charlie was in gangs. Charlie wasn't just a street brawler, he was the real deal. He studied martial arts for years and eventually earned a black belt in karate. This wasn't just swinging fists. Charlie knew technique, strategy, and discipline. Friends like Donald Rawlings confirmed it, saying Charlie could fight for real, not play fight. Some even joked. That mix of natural toughness and trained skill made him intimidating in a way most comedians could never imagine. But toughness King Pythons meant Charlie got pulled into choices that left scars. One of those choices was an armed robbery. He and his crew jacked a taxi driver at gunpoint. Charlie got caught and landed 3 years probation. For most people, that would have been the wake-up call to walk away, but not for him. The streets had a grip too strong. While on probation, Charlie racked up more charges, larceny, loitering, petty crimes. But when you're already on thin ice, little things stack up fast. Eventually, the judge had enough and sent him to Nassau County Jail for 10 months. Charlie later admitted he was a knucklehead back then, impulsive, reckless, and not thinking about tomorrow. Jail was the price he had to pay. Even through all that chaos, Charlie was searching for something deeper. For a while, he connected with the 5 Percenters, also known as the Nation of Gods and Earths, and even took on the name Omar Allah. The movement gave him structure, identity, and a sense of belonging outside the gang life. But Charlie's mind wasn't built to blindly follow. He studied, questioned, challenged the teachings. Eventually, he realized it wasn't truly his path and walked away, proving he wasn't afraid to leave something behind if it didn't feel real. Through every phase, one thing never changed: Charlie's loyalty. Whether it was family, friends, or crew, standing solid for the people he loved was always at the core of who he was. Charlie's loyalty ran deep, to his brother, to his friends, to his crew. Jail was supposed to break him down, supposed to scare him straight, but Charlie later admitted the scariest part was that it didn't scare him at all. He didn't fold, didn't hide, didn't beg for mercy. If anything, jail became the first stage where he tested a whole new side of himself, the entertainer. Locked up with nothing but time and tension, Charlie started cracking jokes, clowning on inmates, even reciting poems about the people around him. Fellow comic Donald Rawlings would later point out that Charlie had never touched a stage before. But inside that county lockup, Charlie Murphy found his voice. Still, don't get it twisted. He wasn't laughing his way through those years like it was light work. Jail gave him an edge, a presence that people felt for the rest of his life. This was a man who had survived both the streets and a cell without being broken by either. And once you've lived through that, you carry it everywhere you go. The day Charlie walked out of prison, he didn't waste a second. No hanging around, no drifting back into the same old patterns. He marched straight into a Navy recruiter's office. It was 1978 and he was just 18 years old. Charlie would later say, "That's when I became a man." In the military, they eliminate the other choices. I needed that. They set me straight. His words showed just how badly he craved structure. For a kid who'd grown up losing his father, bouncing through foster care, protecting his little brother, and running with gangs, the streets were always calling. But the military gave him what the streets never could: discipline. And don't think discipline softened him up. If anything, it made him sharper. The Navy gave him routine, order, and pressure, and Charlie thrived in it. They didn't end his fire, they focused it. 6 years in the Navy turned Charlie Murphy into something even tougher than the man who went in. And that's saying a lot. By the time he came home, he wasn't just hardened. He was disciplined, sharper, and more dangerous than ever. And when he got back, the world had changed. Because Eddie Murphy wasn't just Eddie anymore. He was Eddie Murphy the superstar, lighting up Saturday Night Live, packing out stand-up tours, headlining blockbuster movies. Eddie was everywhere.
Yeah. He used to be Eddie's bodyguard when Eddie was like right at the height of his stuff. But Charlie was like martial arts.
With that kind of fame comes attention, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's where Charlie stepped in. He became part of Eddie's security team, but this wasn't schoolyard scraps anymore. This was Hollywood. Instead of protecting Eddie from bullies, he was guarding one of the biggest stars in the world from threats most people couldn't even imagine. Charlie himself admitted, "I was there for the person I loved." But that loyalty came with heat, because Charlie wasn't the type to play nice. If he thought someone was a threat, he treated them like one, no hesitation. And let's be real, most of the people in Eddie's Hollywood circle weren't used to that kind of energy. They weren't used to being sized up by a man who had actually done time, fought for survival, and stared real danger in the eye, even after leaving the security role, because Charlie knew he wasn't built to live in anyone's shadow. He never lost the edge that got him there.
Well, Neil Brennan tells this story, the co-creator of The Chappelle Show. He tells this story about you, that there was an actual situation where you grabbed a Tech 9 off a dresser and you were going to deal with a situation of some sort.
Hollywood couldn't smooth him out. That street fire never faded. Chris Rock once told a story about Charlie walking into an audition with a real gun, leaving the whole room in shock. And Neil Brennan, co-creator of Chappelle's Show, shared another wild story. Charlie grabbing a Tech 9 to handle a problem the only way he'd been conditioned to back in the streets. That was Charlie Murphy. Funny, fearless, and always ready for battle if it came his way. Eddie had to step in at one point and remind his brother, "This isn't a movie, this is real life." Charlie later admitted he got emotional, furious, and almost made the worst decision of his entire life. He didn't pull the trigger that day, but the fact that he even reached for the weapon showed everything about where he came from. His instincts were fast, and when he felt disrespected or threatened, he was ready to respond in a heartbeat. Eventually, Charlie put the gun down for good, and he later said he was thankful he did. But by then, he didn't even need it. His size, his voice, his presence, and his past already commanded respect. Everyone around him, comedians, actors, rappers, knew Charlie Murphy wasn't just another funny storyteller. He was a man who had actually lived the kind of life most people only rapped about or turned into movie scripts. Over time, Charlie realized he had to change. He admitted that once upon a time, his anger nearly pushed him into making a fatal mistake with that gun. But instead of falling over the edge, he stepped back. He made the choice to let it go, to stop carrying, to grow. That was the mark of someone who had walked right up to the cliff and refused to jump. Then came 2003, the year everything shifted. Dave Chappelle and Neil Brennan brought him in, and suddenly, Charlie Murphy finally got his spotlight. What set him apart wasn't just being funny. Lots of people were funny. But Charlie's stories weren't made up. They were real. He wasn't acting like a tough guy for the cameras. He had actually lived the madness he described. When he told Charlie Murphy's true Hollywood stories, it was lightning in a bottle. The Rick James sketch alone became one of the most quoted comedy moments in TV history. But if you really listened, Charlie wasn't just clowning. He was giving us a true account of Rick James crossing the line habitually. These weren't manufactured studio tales. Charlie was there, throwing real punches at a superstar who didn't know when to quit. And he always hinted there were countless more stories too raw for TV. The Prince sketch was pure legend. A late-night basketball game with Prince and his crew sounded too wild to be true, until Eddie Murphy himself confirmed every single detail. Yes, Prince really did wipe the floor with them on the court, and then served pancakes afterward. And Prince didn't just laugh it off, he co-signed it, even using Dave Chappelle's parody of him on one of his own single covers.
I used to bully him, but I was like, yeah, you're so tough, but not with a microphone in your hand. And I bullied him so much that he finally went on stage.
That's when you knew these weren't just funny stories. They were stamped into American pop culture forever. But what made those sketches hit harder than any sitcom or stand-up special at the time was Charlie's delivery. His voice, his energy, his presence, it made people lean all the way in. Even when the punchline landed, the danger was still in the room, and that aura never left him. When Hollywood doors opened after Chappelle's show, nobody saw Charlie as just Eddie's brother looking for a break. They knew this was a man who had lived a full, dangerous life before comedy. That's why comedians, rappers, and actors respected him differently. He wasn't background, he was his own man, and a man you didn't want to cross. After Chappelle's show ended in 2006, Charlie stood at a crossroads. His close friend Donald Rawlings straight up bullied him into trying stand-up comedy. At first, Charlie didn't even want to touch the stage, but Rawlings knew he had something special. He told him, "You are so tough in every other way, but not with a microphone in your hand." Eventually, Charlie gave in and bombed. He struggled, admitted it, even sent his career into a tailspin at first. But Charlie was never the type to quit when things got rough. When Martin Lawrence gave him advice, telling him to treat stand-up like another kind of battle, Charlie locked in. He wrote, rehearsed, toured, and sharpened his craft like it was battle prep. And little by little, he carved out his own lane. Soon, he was on the road with the I'm Rich tour, sharing the stage with rising talents like Bill Burr, before Burr even became a household name. Later on, Charlie hit the road with comedy heavyweights, George Lopez, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hewley, Eddie Griffin, on the Comedy Get Down tour. He had stepped out of Eddie's shadow and was now standing shoulder to shoulder with legends of the game. But even under those bright stage lights, that edge never left him. Charlie was still a martial artist, still the guy you didn't want to push too far. Comedians on tour told wild stories about Charlie holding court backstage with UFC fighters, breaking down combat moves with authority like he was teaching class, and nobody doubted a word because they knew Charlie's lessons came from real-life survival, not theory. That's what made his presence different. When Charlie spoke, you felt the truth behind every word. So even when the spotlight was shining and America was laughing at some of the most iconic sketches in TV history, the shadows of his past never fully faded. Charlie Murphy wasn't just Eddie Murphy's brother. He wasn't just a comedian. He was a man who had walked through violence, loss, gangs, and prison, and somehow flipped all that darkness into comedy gold. But if you looked close, really close, you could still see it. That fire in his eyes, the trace of a man who had lived hard, fought harder, and carried his past everywhere he went. Because once you've lived that kind of life, it never really leaves you. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. And I'll see you on the next one.